Evan wiped the sweat from his brow as he crouched behind a cluster of sharp, purple-leaved shrubs. The sun was harsh over the colony, burning bright in the sky of planet Arcanus 9. He squinted through the dense forest, trying to see the alien creature he had been tracking all morning. It was faster and stronger than him, but he had one advantage: his mind. Evan had always been smaller than the other colonists. When they trained for survival, the hunters with broad shoulders and sharp reflexes laughed at him. He tripped more often than anyone else. He struggled to lift heavy supplies. He could barely keep up during training runs. Others called him weak. They said he would never be a true hunter. But Evan had always believed that strength was not only in the body. There was power in noticing, in thinking, in patience, and today he planned to prove it, though no one else would know it yet. The alien creature ahead was called a shither, a small but cunning predator. Its skin shimmered in shades of green and blue, and its many eyes reflected the sunlight in strange patterns. Most humans ran at the first sign of a shither, but Evan had observed them long enough to understand their habits. He knew it would come to the water source at noon. He had spent days studying its tracks, noting the way it moved and where it hid. He held his breath as the shither appeared, slinking between the trees like liquid shadow. Evan stayed still. One wrong move and it could detect him. But he did not panic. Instead, he followed the creature's path, noting each leaf it touched, each soft step it took. Meanwhile, the colony's elite hunters were preparing for their own missions. Kale, the greatest of them all, was known for feats no human should be able to accomplish. He moved like lightning, tracked like the sharpest predator, and had strength that seemed almost superhuman. People whispered that Kale had saved the colony countless times. And yet even he would sometimes fail if he relied only on brute strength without thought. Back in the forest, Evan watched the shither dip its head to drink from a small pool. Carefully, he gathered a handful of stones and arranged them near the water's edge. He remembered something he had read in an old human survival manual. Sometimes clever distractions worked better than chasing. The shither paused. Its many eyes scanned the area. One stone rolled slightly under Evan's careful push. The creature's gaze shifted. Its instinct told it that danger was near. But instead of panicking, it moved toward the sound, and Evan quietly followed, staying hidden. He led the shither toward a small clearing where he had placed a net, not strong enough to harm it, but enough to contain it. The shither stepped into the clearing and tripped over the net. It struggled, but Evan had calculated everything precisely. He approached slowly, speaking softly. The shither froze, sensing that the human meant no harm. After a tense moment, Evan carefully lifted the net and guided the creature away from the colony. It would not threaten the settlers, and it would remain unharmed. Evan exhaled. His heart pounded with excitement, though no one was around to see it. For years he had watched the hunters perform daring feats and felt invisible. No one noticed when he tried to help or when he learned something new. But today he had done something remarkable with nothing but patience, observation, and thought. As he turned to leave the forest, a shadow fell over him. Evan froze. Kyle stood there tall and imposing, his gaze fixed on Evan. The elite huntsman had been observing him without Evan knowing. "You stayed behind," Kyle said, his voice calm but powerful. "I watched you with the shither." Most would have panicked. Evan felt his stomach twist. I just wanted to make sure it didn't hurt anyone," he stammered. Kyle stepped closer. "And yet you did it better than some of my best hunters. You were careful, precise, and calm. That is why you survived." Evan blinked. No one had ever spoken to him like that. He had spent his life being laughed at, dismissed, told he was too weak, too small, too slow. And now Kale, the greatest hunter on the planet, was praising him. I don't understand," Evan said. Kale's eyes softened. "Strength is not only in muscle. Some people can lift more, run faster, fight harder. But it is the mind, the heart, the courage to act wisely that makes a true hunter. You have that, Evan. That is why I'm calling you brother." Evan's jaw dropped. The word felt strange and warm at the same time. Brother? Kyle? It was a title that belonged to trusted companions, those who shared bonds deeper than friendship. Evan had never had that kind of recognition before. I don't know what to say," Evan whispered. "Say nothing," Kale replied. "Just keep learning, keep watching, keep thinking. You will grow stronger in ways even you cannot imagine." Evan nodded, feeling a spark inside him he had never felt before. This was not just about survival anymore. It was about purpose, about proving that humans could be more than the sum of their bodies. Even someone seen as weak could stand with the greatest. As they walked back to the colony, Evan noticed the other hunters in the distance. Some glanced at him, curious. Others looked doubtful. But Cale walked beside him, silent and proud. For the first time, Evan felt a sense of belonging. That night, Evan sat under the twin moons of Arcanus 9, reflecting on the day. The stars seemed brighter than ever. He thought of the shither he had saved, of Cale's words, of the possibility of becoming more than what people expected. He felt a quiet determination settle in his chest. Tomorrow he would train harder. Tomorrow he would watch more carefully. Tomorrow he would prove that strength came in many forms and that even the weakest human could stand tall when courage and wisdom were on their side. He smiled. For the first time, being weak no longer felt like a burden. It was a beginning. The forest whispered around him, and somewhere in the distance the shither watched from its hidden place. It seemed to understand that Evan was different. Not a hunter to fear, but a protector. And somewhere in the quiet of the colony, Cale's eyes watched him too. Brother. That word would mean more than Evan could yet imagine. But for now it was enough. Evan closed his eyes and let the night wrap around him. He was small. He was weak. But he was human. And humanity had a strength that no alien could match. A strength of heart, of mind, and of spirit. The journey had only just begun. The morning sun rose over the colony, casting a golden glow over the metal domes and forest beyond. Evan stood near the edge of the settlement, his eyes scanning the horizon. Cale had invited him to join a tracking mission today, not as a weak trainee, but as a companion. Evan felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was his chance to prove himself further, yet he knew the elite hunters would watch his every move. Cale approached silently, his steps confident and measured. "Today we follow a different trail," Cale said, his voice calm but commanding. "There have been reports of unusual movement in the northern forest, something the others haven't noticed." Evan nodded. He had spent countless hours studying the forest, learning its patterns, its dangers, and its secrets. He knew that the smallest detail could make the difference between success and disaster. They moved through the trees in near silence. Evan noticed how Cale walked effortlessly over roots and rocks, how he read the signs of the forest like it spoke to him directly. Evan tried to emulate him, paying attention to the rustle of leaves, the snap of twigs, and the faint tracks on the soft soil. Suddenly, a series of sharp sounds echoed ahead. Alien screeches mixed with the snapping of branches. Kyle signaled for Evan to stop. His sharp eyes caught movement among the trees. A group of virels, larger and more unpredictable than the shither Evan had encountered before. They were dangerous but not mindlessly aggressive. Most humans would panic at the sight, relying only on weapons and brute force. Evan remembered Cale's words from the day before. Strength is not only in muscle. Some people can lift more, run faster, fight harder, but it is the mind, the heart, the courage to act wisely that makes a true hunter. He focused, observing, thinking, waiting. The virels moved cautiously, their many legs making strange patterns on the forest floor. Most hunters would charge, hoping to scare them off or trap them. Evan shook his head. That would only provoke them, and the colony could be at risk. Cale noticed Evan's hesitation. "You have an idea?" he asked quietly. Evan nodded. "We can guide them away without hurting them," he said. "They follow sound and scent. If we leave a trail away from the colony, they will go where we want them to." Cale raised an eyebrow, impressed. "Show me." Evan quickly gathered a few stones, sticks, and a pouch of natural powders that created subtle scents. Carefully, he laid a trail leading away from the colony and toward a safe canyon where the virels could roam without danger. Kyle watched silently, nodding occasionally. The virels followed Evan's trail, curious and cautious. It took patience and precision, but Evan did not waver. Slowly, the creatures moved away from the forest near the colony, guided by Evan's careful planning. The hunters who had been trailing the creatures from a distance were amazed. They had expected a chaotic battle, but Evan's method worked perfectly. Cale stepped beside Evan. "You think before you act. That is rare," he said. "Most hunters rely on speed and strength. You rely on your mind. That is why you are my brother." Evan felt a warm glow inside. The word brother had never felt so heavy with meaning. It was trust, respect, and recognition all at once. Before they could leave, the Virals made a sudden movement. One of the creatures turned sharply, spotting the hunters. Its sharp eyes reflected suspicion and intelligence. Evan realized that the simple trail might not be enough. They needed a more clever plan. Thinking quickly, Evan whispered to Kale, "We need to distract it with light and sound. Not to scare it, just to guide it further. Follow my lead." Kale watched as Evan set small reflective panels and rattling sticks along the trail. As sunlight hit the panels, beams reflected across the forest floor, catching the Viral's attention. The rattling sticks created subtle sounds that lured the creatures onward. Slowly, steadily, the Virals followed the new guidance, leaving the colony completely safe. Kyle's eyes gleamed with admiration. "I've seen many hunters in my life, Evan, but I have never seen someone do this. Without weapons, without brute force, only mind and heart. That is true strength." Evan breathed heavily but smiled. He had just led dangerous creatures away from the colony without anyone being harmed, and Kale had recognized him, not as weak, not as small, but as a partner. The journey back to the colony was quiet. The forest seemed calmer, as if it respected Evan's careful handling of the Virals. Evan thought about his childhood, the endless training sessions, the laughter and dismissal of others. He realized something, being small, being weak, had forced him to think differently. It had forced him to observe, to plan, to innovate, and now that difference had become his greatest strength. As they reached the edge of the colony, Kale stopped and looked at Evan. "Tomorrow we train differently. I will teach you not only to observe but to act with purpose and speed when it matters. You have potential most humans do not even imagine, but potential is nothing without experience." Evan nodded eagerly. "I am ready, Kale. I want to learn everything." Kale smiled faintly. "Good. But remember, being a hunter is not only about skills. It is about understanding life, about knowing when to act and when to wait, about protecting others. You are already beginning to understand that, Evan. That is why I called you brother. Keep that in mind." That night, Evan sat beneath the twin moons of Arcanus 9 again, thinking about the day's events. The Virals moved safely in the canyon. The colony was secure, and Kale had seen him not as a weak human, but as a trusted partner. For the first time, Evan felt he belonged. He felt that being different, thinking differently, was a gift, not a curse. He could still remember the whispers of the other hunters, their laughter, their doubts. And now, those echoes felt distant, like voices from a life he had outgrown. The forest, the creatures, Kyle, all of it reminded him that humanity's true strength was not only in muscle and reflex. It was in courage, intelligence, and compassion. Evan closed his eyes and let the cool night wind brush against his face. He felt ready for the challenges ahead. He knew that more dangers awaited, more creatures, more mysteries, more tests of his mind and heart. But he also knew that he had the trust of Kale, and the recognition that even the weak could achieve greatness. As the stars reflected on the domes of the colony, Evan felt a quiet determination growing inside him. Tomorrow, he would learn more from Kale. Tomorrow he would face new trials, and tomorrow he would continue proving that humanity, though small and fragile in a universe of giants, could rise above challenges with courage, wisdom, and heart. And somewhere in the distant forest, the Virals watched from the shadows, their eyes glimmering with curiosity and intelligence. Evan wondered if one day they would remember him not as an intruder, but as a protector. That thought made him smile, and for the first time, he felt the deep satisfaction of knowing he had made a difference. Kyle, walking silently beside him, gave a small nod. Evan felt the unspoken bond of brotherhood between them. It was no longer just a word, it was a promise. A promise that together, they would face whatever challenges the wilds of Arcanus 9 threw at them, and that humanity, in all its resilience, would endure. The night was calm, but Evan's heart raced with anticipation. The journey was far from over. The universe was vast, and dangers and mysteries waited beyond every hill and forest. Yet he was no longer afraid. He had a purpose. He had a guide. And above all, he had the recognition that strength came in many forms, forms that the universe had yet to truly understand. Evan took a deep breath, feeling the bond of brotherhood settle firmly in his heart. With Kale at his side, and his mind sharp and ready, he was ready for the next challenge. And he knew that whatever lay ahead, he would meet it with courage, intelligence, and the strength of being human. The morning on Arcanus 9 was crisp and bright. Evan rose early, the twin moons fading as the sun climbed the sky. Today, Kale had planned a special mission, a test of skill, patience, and teamwork. It would not be an ordinary hunt. The forest around the colony had areas unknown to most humans, dense and full of challenges. And Kale wanted Evan to learn not only to observe, but to act decisively when it mattered most. "Are you ready?" Kyle asked, his sharp eyes scanning Evan. Evan nodded, gripping the strap of his pack. "Yes, Kale, I am ready." They moved into the forest in silence, each step careful, each sound noted. Kyle watched Evan closely, silently judging how he moved, how he thought, and how he reacted. They came to a shallow river where the water ran swiftly between smooth rocks. Kale gestured. "Cross the river," he said. "The path ahead is dangerous and there will be obstacles. I want to see how you handle them." Evan studied the water. Most humans would have jumped recklessly, relying on strength or luck. Evan looked at the stones, the current, and the spacing. He calculated his steps carefully, moving slowly and steadily. Kale followed, noting the precision in Evan's movements. Halfway across, a sudden shift in the current caused one of the rocks to slip. Evan almost lost his balance, but he steadied himself, gripping another stone. Kale smirked quietly. He had expected Evan to struggle, but the young human's calm reaction impressed him. "Not bad," Kyle murmured. Once across, they entered a thick section of forest where the trees grew tall and twisted, their branches forming natural tunnels. Evan noticed unusual patterns in the leaves and undergrowth. Small tracks, faint scratches, and broken branches suggested that a creature larger than the Virals had passed through recently. Kale stopped. "Good observation. Most hunters would have missed those signs. Follow me carefully. We must approach without alarming it." Evan's heart raced. This was the first time he would face a creature beyond his previous experience, something intelligent and unpredictable. They moved slowly, communicating only with gestures and soft whispers. Evan learned how Kale's eyes picked up every tiny movement, every sound, every hint of life in the forest. Suddenly the ground trembled lightly. Leaves rustled and a shadow moved among the trees. It was a gryphoid, a massive herbivore with powerful limbs and keen senses. Despite being non-aggressive, a gryphoid could cause chaos if startled. Most hunters would attempt to frighten it away with noise and force. Evan remembered Kale's teachings. "Observation first, action second," he whispered. "It's just ahead. If we move carefully, we can guide it back to the meadow. It won't harm us and the colony will remain safe." Kale nodded, impressed. "Good. Lead the way." Evan crept forward, choosing paths that minimized sound and disturbance. He noticed the creature's ears twitching and its eyes following their movement. Slowly, they guided the gryphoid toward a safe corridor leading away from human habitats. Every step required careful thought and attention. Evan realized that this mission was more than a test. It was a lesson in leadership and responsibility. Midway through the corridor, a fallen tree blocked the path. Kyle looked at Evan. "Your call." Evan scanned the area. The gryphoid was anxious, uncertain. He realized that if they approached directly, it might panic. Instead, he found a narrow passage around the fallen tree and gently guided the creature through, using calm gestures and soft sounds. The gryphoid followed without resistance. Kale's expression softened. "Impressive," he said. "You are learning to lead without fear. That is rare, Evan. That is why you are my brother. Not by blood, but by courage and trust." Evan smiled quietly. He felt a deep sense of pride, yet he knew the mission was not over. Ahead, the terrain grew steeper and the forest denser. Branches tangled, roots snaked across the path, and visibility dropped. Most humans would have panicked or used brute force to push through. Evan relied on careful observation, mapping out each step and noting every potential hazard. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the forest. A slither, smaller than a gryphoid but faster and more cunning, appeared ahead. Its many eyes glimmered with curiosity and caution. Evan froze. He knew the creature could strike quickly and the gryphoid might react violently if startled. Kale whispered, "You decide. What will you do?" Evan thought quickly. Running or attacking would end badly. He needed a solution that used intelligence over strength. He remembered how light and sound had guided the Virels. He scanned the forest and spotted reflective leaves and dangling vines. Using them carefully, he created subtle movement and patterns, catching the slither's attention without frightening it. The creature tilted its head, intrigued, and followed the distraction slowly. Evan guided it away from the gryphoid and toward a safe glade. Kale watched silently, his respect growing with every precise action Evan took. When the slither disappeared into the glade, Evan exhaled. His body shook with the adrenaline of success. Kale placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are learning quickly," Kale said. "Not everyone can think on their feet like that. Not everyone can face danger and find a safe solution. Most humans would have panicked or acted recklessly. You acted wisely. That is why I trust you. That is why I call you brother." Evan's heart swelled. Each word from Kale strengthened his confidence. He realized the true strength was not about being the fastest or the strongest. It was about thinking, observing, and acting with purpose. They continued their journey, guiding both creatures back to safe areas. Along the way, Evan noticed small signs of the forest's balance. Plants that flourished near water, insects that followed predictable patterns, and even the subtle interactions between species. Kale explained how understanding these patterns made hunters more effective. "A hunter who respects life, who understands it, will always succeed," Kale said. "Strength without understanding is useless." By the time they returned to the colony, Evan was exhausted but exhilarated. He had faced creatures larger and more unpredictable than anything he had encountered before. He had guided them safely, protected the colony, and gained the trust of Kale, the greatest hunter among humans. That evening, the colony gathered for a quiet celebration. Word of Evan's guidance of the gryphoid and slither spread among the settlers. People who had once dismissed him as weak now looked at him with curiosity, some with admiration. Evan realized that courage and intelligence could earn respect, even from those who doubted him. Kale approached Evan privately. "You have done well today," he said. "But remember, the forest always has more lessons. Today you learned to guide and protect. Tomorrow you may face challenges that test your mind, your heart, and your courage even further. Are you ready?" Evan nodded firmly. "Yes, Kyle. I want to face whatever comes next." Kyle smiled. "Good. Because being a hunter, being a protector, is a lifetime of learning. Strength is not only in action, but in wisdom and understanding. You are on the right path, brother. Keep walking it." That night, Evan lay under the stars, feeling the twin moons cast soft light over Arcanus 9. He thought of the gryphoid, the slither, the patterns of the forest, and the lessons he had learned. He realized that every challenge was an opportunity to grow, to understand, and to prove that humanity's greatest strength was its mind, heart, and courage. Evan closed his eyes, feeling a quiet determination settle in his chest. He was no longer the weakling who tripped over roots or struggled with heavy tools. He was a human, learning to stand strong in his own way, and with Kale beside him, teaching, guiding, and trusting him, he knew that the future held endless possibilities. The forest whispered around him, alive with unseen creatures, patterns, and life. Evan felt connected, aware, and ready. The trials of the day had strengthened him, not in muscle but in spirit. And he knew that no matter what the forest, the wilds, or the universe threw at him next, he would face it with courage, intelligence, and the bond of brotherhood. Evan opened his eyes, looking at the horizon. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the colony. He thought about tomorrow and the next lesson and the next adventure. He felt hope, excitement, and pride. For the first time, he believed not just in himself, but in the power of humans to rise above challenges, no matter how impossible they seemed. The journey was far from over, but Evan was ready. Side by side with Kale, he would continue learning, growing, and proving that humanity, though small in the vast universe, could face anything with courage, wisdom, and heart. The sun rose slowly over Arcanus 9, casting long golden beams through the alien forest. Evan stretched, feeling his muscles ache from the previous day's trials, yet his heart was full of energy. Today, Kale had promised a new challenge, a mission that would test not only their skills, but their understanding of the forest and its hidden mysteries. Kale approached with his usual calm confidence. "Evan," he said, "today we explore the eastern region. Few humans have ever entered it. It is dense, dangerous, and full of unknown life. Are you ready?" Evan nodded firmly. "Yes, Kale. I'm ready." They moved through the forest in silence, the crunch of leaves and the whisper of wind filling the air. Evan had grown accustomed to observing the subtle signs of life, the way insects moved, the sway of branches, the faint sounds that hinted at unseen creatures. Kale watched him closely, noting how Evan's mind worked in tandem with his body. After an hour of walking, they reached a deep ravine. A thin river ran at the bottom, and the opposite side rose sharply, covered in thick undergrowth. Crossing it would be difficult. Most humans would have looked for a bridge or tried to leap across, relying on luck. But Evan studied the terrain carefully. "Look," he whispered, pointing to a cluster of strong vines and natural stepping stones. "We can use these to cross safely." Kale's eyes glimmered with approval. "Good observation. Lead the way." Evan moved carefully, testing each stone and vine before putting his full weight on it. Kale followed, silent but impressed. Halfway across, a sudden gust of wind shook the vines. Evan held his breath, steadying himself and guiding Kale across as well. They reached the other side safely. As they continued, Evan noticed unusual patterns in the vegetation. Some plants were bent as if something large had passed through. Others had leaves nibbled in precise patterns, suggesting intelligent feeding habits. Evan realized that these were signs of alien herbivores, larger and more unusual than anything the colony had catalogued. Kale gestured toward a clearing ahead. "Stay alert. I suspect we are not alone." As they entered the clearing, they saw a group of Luminara, tall, gentle creatures that glowed softly with bioluminescence. They seemed curious, observing Evan and Kale with cautious intelligence. Most hunters would have feared the Luminara, assuming aggression. Evan remembered Kale's teachings, understanding before action. "Step slowly," he whispered. "We can communicate with them without weapons." Kale nodded, watching Evan guide their steps. Evan extended a hand, palm open, and spoke softly, repeating phrases he had learned from studying Luminara behavior. The creatures tilted their heads, then mirrored his gestures. Slowly, trust formed between them. Evan felt a surge of pride. Not only had he guided dangerous creatures in the past, but now he was building bridges between species, showing that humans could be both brave and compassionate. Suddenly, a distant roar echoed through the forest. The ground trembled and smaller creatures scuttled into hiding. A massive Drathor, a predator known for its intelligence and strength, appeared near the edge of the clearing. Its eyes glowed red and it moved with purpose. Kale placed a hand on Evan's shoulder. "This is a true test. We must protect ourselves and the Luminara, but without provoking the Drathor." Evan thought quickly. He noticed the terrain, a series of boulders and a narrow canyon nearby. He whispered his plan to Kale. "We guide it toward the canyon. It will follow the scent and movement. If we stay calm and strategic, it won't attack us or the Luminara." Kyle nodded silently, allowing Evan to lead. They moved cautiously, creating a trail of movement and sound that attracted the Drathor's attention. Evan used rocks and reflective panels to guide it, just as he had with the Virals and Slither. The Drathor followed, its massive form moving steadily toward the canyon. Evan's heart raced, but he did not panic. He focused on every detail, every step, every sound. Kale followed his lead, impressed by the young human's composure and intelligence. Together, they guided the Drathor safely into the canyon, away from the clearing and the Luminara. When the danger passed, Kyle turned to Evan. "You handled that perfectly. Most hunters would have panicked, but you stayed calm, observed, and acted wisely. That is why I trust you. That is why I call you brother." Evan smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. He realized that every challenge, every creature, and every obstacle was a lesson in true strength. Physical power alone could not have solved these problems. It was courage, intelligence, and empathy that had carried them through. As they returned to the colony, the settlers noticed the changes in Evan. He walked with confidence, his mind sharp and focused. The whispers of doubt and laughter that once followed him had faded. People began to see him not as weak, but as a human capable of extraordinary feats of mind and spirit. That evening, the colony gathered for a discussion of the day's events. Evan and Cale shared their observations, teaching the settlers how to understand and interact with the creatures of Arcanus 9. Evan spoke with clarity and confidence, explaining patterns in behavior, safe guidance techniques, and the importance of observing before acting. The settlers listened intently, many of them nodding with newfound respect. Evan realized that his knowledge, once dismissed as trivial, was now valued. He felt a sense of pride, not in physical strength, but in contribution, insight, and leadership. Kyle approached him privately. "You have grown much, Evan. Today you demonstrated what I have always known. Strength is not only in the body, but in the mind and heart. You are becoming more than a hunter. You are a leader." Evan felt a surge of determination. "I want to learn more, Cale. I want to be ready for anything that comes." Cale nodded. "Good. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. We will explore deeper regions of the forest, encounter more complex creatures, and face situations that will test every lesson you have learned. Are you ready?" "I am ready," Evan said firmly. That night, Evan sat beneath the twin moons, reflecting on the day's events. He thought of the Gryphoid, the Slither, the Luminara, and the Drather. Each encounter had taught him something new: patience, observation, strategic thinking, empathy, and courage. He realized that true strength was a combination of all these qualities, and that humans, even small and seemingly weak ones, could rise to incredible challenges. He closed his eyes, feeling the bond of brotherhood with Cale. It was no longer just a word, it was a guiding principle. Together they would face the unknown, protect the colony, and show that humanity's greatest strength lay not only in physical ability, but in wisdom, courage, and compassion. Evan opened his eyes, gazing at the horizon where the forest met the sky. The journey was far from over, but he was ready. He had learned to trust his instincts, his mind, and his heart. And with Cale by his side, teaching and guiding him, he knew that whatever challenges awaited, they could face them together. The forest whispered around him, alive with unseen creatures and hidden life. Evan felt connected, aware, and prepared. Each trial had made him stronger, not in muscle, but in spirit. And he knew that the next day would bring new lessons, new adventures, and new opportunities to prove that humanity could rise above any obstacle. With a final glance at the glowing moons, Evan felt a sense of hope and excitement. He had been seen as weak, underestimated, and overlooked. But now he was ready to show that true strength was more than physical. It was in courage, intelligence, empathy, and the bonds humans shared. The journey of discovery, growth, and brotherhood was only beginning. Evan smiled, feeling the quiet power of being human, and the deep connection he now shared with Cale. Together, they would continue to explore, protect, and thrive in the wilds of Arcanus 9, proving that humanity's spirit could overcome even the most daunting challenges. The morning light of Arcanus 9 fell softly over the colony. Evan stretched, feeling anticipation in every fiber of his being. Today would be different. Today, Cale had promised, they would face a challenge unlike any before. It was a test not only of skill, but of courage, wisdom, and the bond between them. Cale approached, his eyes bright with focus. "Evan," he said, "we will venture into the northern plains. A new species has been detected there, intelligent, curious, and unpredictable. This mission will test everything you have learned. Are you ready?" Evan squared his shoulders. "Yes, Cale, I am ready." The journey was long, crossing forests, rivers, and rocky terrain. Evan noticed subtle signs of life that others might have overlooked: tracks in the soil, broken branches, and distant calls. Every step reminded him of how far he had come. Once he would have struggled with basic survival. Now he moved confidently, observing and understanding his surroundings. As they reached the northern plains, they saw movement ahead, a group of Alaras, a species larger than humans but gentle and intelligent. Their translucent skin glowed faintly, reflecting the morning sun. They seemed curious, approaching cautiously. Evan smiled. "We need to show them we mean no harm," he whispered. "Let's move slowly and calmly." Cale nodded, watching as Evan led the way. Using gestures, soft sounds, and calm presence, Evan guided the Alaras, showing respect and trust. Slowly, the creatures responded, moving closer without fear. Evan realized that communication did not require words alone. It required understanding, patience, and empathy. Suddenly, a distant roar echoed across the plains. Evan and Kale tensed. A Tornak, a massive predator known for intelligence and strength, was approaching. Unlike the creatures they had encountered before, this one seemed more aware of their presence. Its eyes glowed red, scanning the plains carefully. Kyle placed a hand on Evan's shoulder. "This is the ultimate test. We must protect the Alaris, ourselves, and the balance of the plains. What is your plan?" Evan thought quickly. Most hunters would have prepared weapons, relied on strength, or attempted to scare the predator. Evan remembered all he had learned: observation, patience, strategy, and compassion. He noticed the terrain, a narrow canyon nearby, shallow streams, and scattered rocks. He turned to Kale. "We guide it toward the canyon," he said. "If we control the path, we can lead it safely without harming it. The Alaris stay calm if we act decisively and thoughtfully." Kale's eyes gleamed with respect. "Do it, brother." Evan moved forward, using subtle movements, reflective panels, and the natural sound of the forest to direct the Tornak. The predator followed, curious and cautious. Evan stayed calm, guiding it carefully toward the canyon while ensuring the Alaris were safe. Kyle followed closely, assisting when necessary, but letting Evan take the lead. Step by step, the Tornak moved exactly as Evan predicted. The Alaris watched in fascination, understanding that these humans were not only brave but wise. After what felt like hours, the Tornak entered the canyon, safely guided away from the plains and the Alaris. Evan exhaled, feeling a surge of pride and relief. He had faced the ultimate challenge, a creature strong, intelligent, and potentially dangerous, and had succeeded without conflict, without harm. Kale turned to Evan, a rare smile on his face. "You have done it, Evan. You faced danger, guided life, and protected both your people and another species. That is true strength. That is why I call you brother." Evan felt a warmth in his chest. Brother. The word now held meaning deeper than he had ever imagined. It was trust, recognition, and equality. He had once been seen as weak, dismissed, and overlooked. Now he stood as an equal, a human whose courage and wisdom could protect life itself. The Alaris approached, their glowing eyes reflecting curiosity and admiration. Evan extended his hand, palm open, and the creatures mirrored him gently. Communication passed silently between species, a mutual understanding forming in the plains. Evan realized that humans, when thoughtful, brave, and compassionate, could connect across worlds and species. Kale placed a hand on Evan's shoulder. "You have learned the greatest lesson of all. Humanity's strength is not only in muscle, but in mind, heart, and spirit. You have proven that even the smallest, weakest human can achieve greatness when they act with wisdom and courage." Evan nodded, feeling a quiet pride. He had trained, observed, and grown. He had faced challenges beyond anything he had imagined and emerged stronger, not just in body, but in spirit and intellect. He understood that being human meant using every resource, mind, heart, and skill, to overcome obstacles and protect life. As they returned to the colony, the settlers noticed the changes in Evan. The boy they had once dismissed now walked with confidence, his mind sharp and his heart steady. Stories of his bravery, wisdom, and compassion spread among the people. Children watched him with admiration. Adults nodded with respect. Evan's journey from weakling to hero inspired all who saw him. That evening, the colony gathered to celebrate the safe return of both humans and alien species. Evan and Kale shared their experiences, teaching others how to approach life with intelligence, courage, and empathy. Evan spoke of observation, strategy, patience, and understanding, showing that strength was not only physical. Kyle stood beside him, silent but proud. "You have done more than survive, Evan. You have shown humanity at its finest. Courage, wisdom, and compassion. These are what make us strong. Never forget that." Evan smiled, realizing the truth of Kale's words. He had once been the weakling, overlooked and dismissed. Now he was recognized for what truly mattered: heart, intelligence, and the willingness to act for the good of others. That night, under the twin moons of Arcanus 9, Evan reflected on his journey. He thought of the Shither, Virals, Gryphoid, Slither, Luminara, Drathor, and Alaris. Each encounter had been a lesson, each challenge a test of his courage, intelligence, and spirit. He realized that humanity's true greatness was in its ability to learn, adapt, and protect life no matter the odds. Kyle joined him, sitting silently. "You are ready, Evan. Not just as a hunter, but as a protector and a leader. The colony and the universe need humans like you. Humans who think, act, and care." Evan nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose. "Thank you, Kale. I could not have done this without your guidance." Kale smiled faintly. "You did this yourself, brother. I only showed you the path. The courage, the wisdom, and the heart were always yours." As they watched the glowing moons rise higher, Evan felt a connection to the world, the creatures, and the people around him. He understood that strength was not measured by muscle or speed, but by the mind, the heart, and the courage to act for the good of all. The forest whispered around them, alive with unseen creatures and quiet life. Evan felt a profound sense of belonging. He had grown from the weakling who tripped over roots into a human whose courage, intelligence, and compassion could face the universe itself. In that moment, Evan understood the meaning of brotherhood, not just with Kale but with humanity itself. Humans could overcome the impossible, protect life, and rise above challenges with heart and mind. And now he had proven it. The journey was far from over. Arcanus 9 was vast, full of mysteries, challenges, and opportunities. But Evan was ready. With Kale at his side, with the lessons he had learned, and with the courage in his heart, he knew that humanity could face any challenge. The colony celebrated. Creatures roamed safely in the plains, and Evan stood with Kale, feeling pride, hope, and determination. He had been seen as weak, underestimated, and overlooked. Now he was a symbol of human potential, a reminder that courage, intelligence, and compassion define true strength. Evan smiled as he looked toward the horizon, where the sun touched the sky and the forest met the plains. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, and new adventures. But he was ready. He was no longer the weakling. He was a human, brave and wise, and humanity's spirit shone brightly through him. Side by side, Evan and Kale walked into the future, ready to protect, to explore, and to show that humans, though small in the vast universe, could rise above every challenge with heart, mind, and courage. And so the weakling who was once dismissed became a hero, a protector and a brother, proving that humanity's greatest strength lay not in physical power, but in the courage to act, the wisdom to understand, and the heart to care.